Hi, this is Scott, WRTI 407. That intro is a little different than what you normally hear when you come to one of my videos, but that's because today we're going to be talking about GMRS radio and why GMRS may be the best platform if you're setting up a communications network for non-radio people. I think I can make that case pretty effectively, but before I get to that, I want to talk about this recent development in me suddenly popping up with a GMRS call sign. And this all started a couple of weeks ago, actually. And it started like a lot of interesting things in my life. It started being one thing and it turned into something completely different. And in this case, it went in a very positive direction versus a negative one. But it did have a negative start. Where this kind of got me going was there's some very recent YouTube radio channel drama going on. It's not too bad, but it's annoying nonetheless. And it goes to this whole GMRS versus ham radio thing we got going on right at the moment. And I want to do a separate video on that completely because I think there's some nuances and some details here that people are not seeing because they're so entrenched in who they are and what they do that they're not paying attention to the effect they're having on others and the fact that they are in fact causing the problem for themselves. So I'm going to get into that in a separate video. But that kind of got me looking at GMRS because I was checking out the content that some of these channels had, and in the process I actually started listening to the content. And I started realizing that GMRS does some things that, while I was somewhat aware of it, it didn't really factor in actively to my thinking because honestly, anything a GMRS radio operator can do, I can already do as a technician level operator, so big deal. So I don't pay any attention to it. But what I was missing completely was something that has been plaguing me as I've been working through setting up a comm plan for the people in my immediate orbit. And that would include my family, some friends. And this started all the way back at the beginning of the pandemic when it looked like the beginning of a science fiction movie and everyone was pretty worried that the world was about to collapse. And, well, it didn't. There was cause for legitimate concern. And I had people that had never before asked me certain questions about buying guns and setting up, communications and getting storage food and medical training and on it goes. So because I'm sort of the resident wingnut when it comes to that kind of stuff in my family and amongst my friends, there's a saying, when the going gets weird, the weird become relevant. Well, everybody suddenly started taking an interest in all the crap I've been talking about all these years. And amongst the things that we talked about was setting up communications because they knew I was into radios and they'd been over to my house and seen all the antennas poking up all over the place. So their assumption was, well, when it comes to setting up communications, so Scott will just handle it. And it presented some challenges for me because, yeah, I could set up an ad hoc simplex radio network that might or might not work very effectively with some of these radios and we'd be operating illegally. And it wouldn't make a heck of a lot of sense. And to be honest with you, like I said, it wouldn't work very well because we're separated geographically around the town just enough to where simplex communications are not that effective. We could set up relay, but it would be tedious and it would take time to pass information. And then if they don't really know what they're doing as far as relaying, it turns into a game of telephone where the message changes once it's gone through enough hands. So the most effective way is just a repeater, be able to, directly contact. But of course, again, if we're talking amateur radio, if we're talking ham, that's not effective. It can't be done legally, and I'm not going to, jump on my club's repeater or one of the other repeaters in town and start abusing the thing. So it's been a continual problem. Now, one solution is I get everybody in my family and all my friends to take time out of their day, study for a test, or go to a class, then go down and take the test and go through and jump through all the hoops to become a technician level amateur radio operator. We all know that it's hard enough to recruit people that are already showing an interest in radio, let alone taking people that have no interest in radio and then expecting them to do that. It is virtually impossible. You can get one or two here and there, and I've been able to do that, but I'm not going to get everybody. And if I don't get everybody, I don't have anybody. Okay, so one thing that really got my attention, because again, I hadn't been thinking about GMRS because it was just sort of an out of sight, out of mind thing. And because there is some static between the two groups, I just kind of, if I see GMRS contact, I would just blow past it. And that nonsense, that's the kind of thinking that screws you up. You got to have an open mind. You got to have a flexible mind. You got to have a prepared mind. And when you let emotion come into play, it spoils the system. So again, getting back to this little deep dive I did, I'm going through and I'm seeing things like, oh, you can operate radios, and I sort of knew it, but it's like you can operate, well, let me grab one here, Baofeng UV9 Golf. Basically, exactly the same as a Baofeng GT3WP. Same radio, just a little different in terms of the programming and what you can and cannot do with it, but capabilities-wise, it goes right to the reason that I became an amateur radio operator in the first place. When I first jumped into radios in terms of prepping and getting ready for nonsense after I left the county, I used these blister pack FRS GMRS radios. They're not very good, 0.5 watt to 2 watts at max. It's got a fixed antenna that's already a pretty compromised antenna. These are not good radios. They very short range, very ineffective. And it was because of that I became an amateur radio operator, so I could use things like the Yaesu FT60. Excellent radio. Very, very good. Well, we know that already. I've talked about that enough. But now, though, after 2017, all of a sudden everything changes now. And we can have radios that'll do a lot of what the FT60 will do. Not all of it. You're limited to UHF communications only and a limited range of channels and like 8 repeater possibilities. But repeaters. Now it starts to dawn on me that, hey, look, with GMRS, there is no test to take. You pay $35 and that covers everyone within the immediate family. So for each of the households that I'm trying to organize communications for, all each one of those households needs to do is pay $35. They have to go to a website. It's very easy to get an FRN. It's very easy from that point to fill out the application online for the license grant. You pay your $35 with a credit card. Within 48 hours, they email you your ticket and you are good to go. I did the whole GMRS process in 4 days. That included getting my ticket and getting a radio via Amazon. Okay, so for less than $100, that household can have a call sign and a radio. Now the challenge is, how do we connect everybody together? Simplex, of course, is still a thing, and you can do simplex relay, but it turns out that I am geographically located on the west side of town, west side of Visalia, and all of my relatives are spread within 5 miles to the north, 5 miles to the south, 5 miles to the east, and then I have one set of relatives, my daughter, who is about 15 miles outside of town. That'll be a different kettle of fish to deal with, but for the most part, everyone in my orbit, if I had a repeater at my house, I can talk to all of them now. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Here at my house, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get a little more interested in my tower situation. I haven't been up to this point. External antenna is attached to the house. Instead, I'm going to take it up a bit. I'm going to go ahead and put a tower that I can crank up, get it up to as high as I can get it with the city. And I'm going to hook that up to a repeater. Now, I haven't decided which way I want to go in terms of repeater. If I want to go with something like the Comm unit, where everything is included, and they pre-program it, send it to you, plug it in, you're good to go. Or do the Wushan or whatever it's called, the 1000G, where you can link 2 of those together. But once you get a duplexer and the rest of it, honestly, it works out pretty close to the Comm price. So more on that later. I'm starting to go off on a tangent there, but here's what I'm going to end up with. I'm going to have a bunch of people that have no interest in going down and taking a test to become a technician level operator. Instead, I'm going to have every single household, and for Christmas, what they're going to get this year is everybody's going to get a prepaid burner card for $35. And then I'm going to go around with my laptop and I'm going to sign every single family up, and it'll be an early Christmas present, but every family is going to get signed up and they're going to get their tickets. Each household will now have their call sign, and then I'll buy them each one of these Baofeng UV9 Golfs, and that's about $45. May do some other stuff, but for a remarkably low amount of money, I can set up a really solid communications network on this side of town, very trouble-free. And as I said, it does most of what you can do as a technician level amateur radio operator. Yeah, you don't get all of the frequencies, and yeah, you don't get 2 meter and you don't get 1.25. That's okay. I can do that. That's where I use all of that stuff and liaise with other people in the radio community, and then relay those comms to my communications network that I've set up. But this is where GMRS right now is still pretty Wild West. Like I said, with repeaters, there's no repeater coordinator. You don't have to transmit a call sign over the repeater like you have to do with ham. And then as far as rules go with GMRS, and again, early days for me here, but it's pretty darn simple. You got to drop your call sign, no candy. You got to do that at the end of your transmission or every 15 minutes. No profanity. Beyond that, not much else really. So it's interesting. And then I'm also hearing that Citizens Band Radio, they're talking about putting FM into Citizens Band Radio like they have set up in Australia. If they do that and there's no licensing at all, that opens up, it's probably going to be 2 meter as well. So that now opens up 2 meter as an unlicensed band. So it's interesting times for FM line of sight communications. Now, a downside to this for the ham radio community is this is going to siphon off so many people that were looking at getting into the hobby. And it's going to dump them right in the laps of a bunch of people that aren't real happy with the amateur or the ham radio community right now because of the way they've been treated. So this is why I think I need to do a follow-up video on how we need to, as ambassadors, start laying some groundwork with the people in the GMRS community. And that's easily done because another interesting aspect is that I would be interested in knowing the numbers. I don't have the numbers, but I'm going to bet a large number of the GMRS community, there's a lot of people that are also licensed hams as well in there. And we could go a long way towards getting a cooperative effort going instead of having this adversarial relationship we have. And again, it's all the way down to just some cranky old dudes that just don't know when to shut up. So this has been kind of a little all over the place, but I think I've made the case. If you've got a group of people that are not radio people and that and you know you're not going to be able to get them down and get them licensed as techs, get them GMRS licenses. You're halfway there. Okay, let's say you're 1/3 of the way there. But at least now you have them on good FM line of sight communications that you can hook up to a repeater. You can run 50 watts. You can run mobile rigs. It's good enough. How about that? It's good enough to set up a pretty solid net. So I'm going to be doing a lot more GMRS content moving forward in addition to the ham radio stuff that I do, because it does fall definitely within the world of tactical radio. It does fall definitely within the world of mutual assistance groups and enhanced neighborhood watches and just your family and friends that you're, prepping for whatever. So more GMRS content to go forward, and I'm going to do that follow-up video talking about how we could be better as amateur radio operators, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the gear and sort of where the state of the industry is right now in terms of the available rigs that you can buy. So with that, I'll bring it to a close, and I'll say this is Scott, WRTI 407, Kilo Sierra 6, Delta Alpha Yankee in Southwest Visalia, California. Have a wonderful day.